I'd like to welcome you today here to this place with your lived experience, your gender expression, your country of origin, your religion, your political beliefs, your communication style, all the elements that make you you are welcome here today. My name's Amy Horn, and I'm here to talk to you about diversity, inclusion, and equity, and how at AWS we are fusing DEI with technology and why. Our customers often want to look under the hood and get a sense of the special sauce that makes AWS so unique. And our diversity, equity, and inclusion tactics are part of that secret sauce. So I'm here today to talk about our approach, how we're hiring, how we're developing tech talent, how we're focused on creating an inclusive culture, and how we're helping our customers make progress in these areas. I'm going to leave you with 3 powerful questions you can always be asking as you take these ideas home to your own organizations. So let's start with a level set. What is this thing called DEI? Diversity is about your unique skills, experiences, perspectives, and your cultural background. It's all the things that make you you, and it's intersectional. Equity is really about fairness. It's about making sure everyone has access and opportunities, and it's about being aware of and working to remove the barriers that some groups experience. And inclusion, of course, inclusion is about belonging. It's about being invited, but also being made to feel welcome. In an inclusive environment, individuals can bring all of their lived experiences and fully show up as themselves and can contribute to the max. Let's take a little closer look at equity before we get too deep into any of these topics, because I think it's the most misunderstood. The nuances between equality and equity are really important if you want to do any kind of DEI work. I like to think about it that equality has gotten us where we are today, and equity is going to take us further. Let's look at a real-world example of equity versus equality. Let's say that where you go to work has a front door that's accessed by a set of staircase or by a set of stairs. So everybody uses the same door and these same set of stairs to get in and out of the office. This is going to work for most people. However, you're probably going to have 1 or more employees who use a wheelchair. At some point, 1 or more of your employees is going to be 8.5 months pregnant. And you probably are going to have employees who at some point are going to need to move heavy equipment in and out of this building. So while everyone has the same equal access to that front door, there's actually barriers to access for some or all of your employees at some point. What equality would do is say, let's provide a ramp. Now, everybody has a choice, use the ramp, use the stairs, but we're providing this, enough access to meet everyone's needs so everybody can actually get to work. Equality is when everyone is given the same resources, and equity is when folks are given resources specifically tailored to their needs. Make sense? All right, I want to start us with some rather depressing statistics. The tech industry is not diverse. It is, in fact, in the US, less diverse than other industries. On the slide here, you can see the stats for all of US sectors and the tech sector broken out. There are more white folks and more men in our tech sector than there are in our other sectors. There are predominantly fewer women and non-binary people in tech than anywhere else. And it gets worse if you go up the chain of power. When we look at leaders in the tech industry, 80% of those leaders are men and 50% are white. In the US, currently, the African American population is a full 13% of Americans. Guess what percent it is at the top of tech companies? Your guess is probably good. It's less than 1%. So we've got some work to do. I'm assuming that you're here because you understand the power of diversity and that you've already read the studies that say diversity is a powerful business accelerator. Diverse teams, diverse companies, they build better products. They ultimately bring in more revenue for their organization because they can serve more customers better. Diversity is good for business. I don't think I have to sell you in on that. However, what I want to talk to you about today is this idea that it's futile to invest in diversity if you're not also investing in inclusion. Let me say that again because it's really important. Human diversity in any organization is a good thing, but it's not enough. To harness the power of diversity in its employee base, an organization must create a culture of inclusion so that every one of those employees can fully show up at work and participate. A study by the Canadian researcher N.J. Adler showed that while diverse teams outperform homogeneous teams, they can also often be ineffective, and that the most effective teams are both diverse and inclusive, meaning they have inclusive leaders at the top. A diverse team with an inclusive leader in this research outperformed any other team, homogeneous or diverse. So it's really the combination of the two that is a supercharger. That's why at AWS we're focused on both diversity and inclusion. These go hand in hand, they're always together in our models. Diversity and inclusion are currently powering our revenue flywheel. Our culture of inclusion helps both attract and retain a diversity of talent. Our diverse and inclusive groups build better solutions, and we're able to serve more customers better. Increasingly, our customers are also looking to make sure that their vendors have values that match their own. So ultimately, our success is going to depend not only on us meeting our commitment to customers, but also our ability to deliver on our values. And our customers are paying attention. So diversity is a powerful business accelerator, and diversity and inclusion are even more powerful together. And that's why at AWS, our DEI practice is actually called IDE. So we flipped it to lead with inclusion, really to emphasize the power of inclusion and the fact that diversity is futile without it. Let's take a look at some external data that supports this. Organizations that have both diversity and inclusion are 2 times as likely to meet or exceed financial targets versus organizations that are merely diverse. Organizations with diversity and inclusion are 3 times as likely to be high performing. They're 6 times more likely to be innovative and agile. And organizations with diversity plus inclusion are 8 times more likely to achieve better business outcomes. This is from Deloitte Insights. If you want to read the study, it's really fascinating. So you're probably pretty familiar with what diversity is. I want to give you a deeper look at what inclusion is, or what I mean when I talk about inclusion. Inclusion is really something that everyone can participate in, which is super cool. It's a mindset and it's a way of acting. And at AWS, we find that inclusion lives or fails to in the day-to-day interactions between people, between employees, between managers, between leaders and their teams, and between us and our customers and our partners. The other great thing about inclusion is it's measurable. So we're putting our leaders on the hook for creating inclusive team cultures, and then we're checking to make sure that they're building those. At AWS, we survey our employees every day. You may have heard about it. It's an Amazon-wide thing. And often we're asking about inclusion. We're asking our employees, do they feel trusted? Do they feel valued? And do they feel informed? And team leaders with teams of 4 or more have access to this data in almost real time. And if their inclusion scores are low, they are offered interventions. They are offered inclusive actions to try. AWS has a bunch of powerful inclusion drivers internally that I'd love to tell you about. Our affinity groups are world famous. Currently, 90,000 Amazonians participate in at least one of our 13 affinity groups. These are things like Warriors At for military personnel and their families, Glamazon for the LGBTQIA+ community, and the Black Employee Network. These are employee-led. They provide inclusion, they provide programming, but really importantly, they also advise our senior leaders. Our affinity groups often are invited to help our most senior leaders make decisions that impact all Amazonians. Another program that I'm really proud of is the AWS-born Inclusion Ambassadors program. Inclusion ambassadors are AWS employees who have raised their hand to say, I want to help build this culture of inclusion. It's totally voluntary, and it's a peer-led or peer evangelism kind of program. where you say, help me teach inclusion to my peers, help me spot and interrupt microaggressions, help me model inclusive behavior. Our goal this year is that 10% of the entire AWS organization will be inclusion ambassadors by the end of the year. We're also constantly refreshing our leadership and our employee training around inclusion. In 2021, the entirety of Amazon had mandatory culture of inclusion training, and we hit our goal at 99% at year end. So let's get back to this galaxy of DEI and these intertwined ideas and think about how we could be applying this at work. So if DEI matters to a business's bottom line, and most companies are saying they really do care about diversity, what is stopping everybody from making much progress here? Well, according to McKinsey & Company, most organizations have a lot of opportunities in actually pulling DEI principles all the way through all of their organizational mechanisms. So accountability and fairness measures need to be built throughout the organization, not just in your hiring pipeline. I have a good example of this actually from Amazon's hiring process. We have set really bold goals on bringing more diverse employees, especially into our tech roles and into our leadership. So we set bold goals on hiring women and people of color in the US. And when we interview a woman or a person of color, we make sure that when the decision is made, the hiring decision is made, there is a woman and or a person of color at that table. That helps us spot bias. It helps us make sure we're giving every candidate a fair shake. And increasingly, we're adding to our peculiar interview style where we ask behavioral questions. We're adding questions about inclusive actions. Things like, what are you doing in your current role to increase the culture of inclusion on your team? Or one of my favorites, tell me about a time when you've advocated for someone with less power or privilege than you. And we are passing on candidates who we believe will detract from our culture of inclusion. This is what I mean by DEI needs to be systemic. It's not enough to set hiring targets and feel like you're done. You have to be constantly monitoring and improving your culture so that the underrepresented folks you bring into your organization can flourish, can stay, can be your future leaders. Diversity is not an innovation problem. If it were, AWS probably would have solved it already. It's an execution problem. It's a cultural problem. At its fundament, it absolutely needs accountability and a leadership commitment to changing the status quo. This is a hard one, right? Because what's worked for us historically has gotten us where we are today. And if we want a different outcome, we've got to change our ways and means. According to the World Economic Forum's research in diversity work, verbal commitments are everywhere, and accountability and performance are much less common. So if you want to tackle diversity in your organization, you need true commitment. You also need really good data and you need tenacity. None of this stuff gets solved overnight. This is legacy work. Here are some tactics that can help. Make sure you're measuring your current state and that then you use that data to set bold goals. Your goals may be quarterly or annually, but you should also have some 5- and 10-year goals because like I said, this is legacy work. This is slow change over time. You also need to probably recruit from broader sources. And you need to purposely hire, but also support and promote underrepresented leaders. It is not enough to have diversity in your base. Without representation, it will continually get harder to attract and retain women and people of color. You have to see yourself at the top to imagine yourself there. Representation matters. That means hire leaders who look different than your status quo leaders. Hire leaders from non-dominant cultures and let them lead. Lastly, understanding barriers to equity and starting to remove them is fundamental to this work. Do you know what the barriers are in your organization for people from non-dominant cultures? If you don't, that's a great place to start. Start asking those questions. Start looking at the current processes and mechanisms that are allowing some folks to easily pass through that front door of your building and preventing barriers to others. AWS is dedicated to building the next generation of technical leaders. We're providing communities across the globe with broader access to STEM education. And so far, we've invested $50 million to support STEM-focused programs, both at AWS and at partner organizations. We've also pledged to help 29 million people around the world have access to free cloud training skills by 2025. We're doing a lot of other things. We're also funding research at the UC Santa Barbara Center for Responsible Machine Learning. And we're working right now with Howard University in the US to create a master's program focused on data science and to weave cloud skills through a lot of their other technical programs. Training and hiring underrepresented talent is a primary goal, and then, like I said, we also have to remove barriers to success. One of the things that we've learned at AWS that does work to help historically marginalized people succeed and take on leadership roles in organizations where they have not historically been in the majority is sponsorship. You may be familiar with this term. Sponsorship is a lot like mentorship, but a sponsor is a more powerful mentor. Literally, they usually have more power in their organization. And figuratively, they are responsible for your success. So a sponsor has some skin in the game. A sponsor is going to sing your praises to their peers and to leaders. A sponsor is going to take the time to understand your career goals and then take partial responsibility for helping you achieve those. They're going to volunteer your name for stretch assignments. They're going to make sure that you have visibility into the next level of the organization. All organizations should consider sponsorship as a way to supercharge the internal diversity that exists today. If you did want to set up a sponsorship program, it's not hard to do, but you do need commitment from senior leaders. You also need to make sure that you're measuring the impact of the program. At AWS, in our Sponsor for Success program, we're measuring success and iterating constantly. And what we're measuring is both retention of folks who are in the program versus our general population and our underrepresented population, but also time to promotion for folks who are in the program versus general population and our underrepresented population. And we see a significant lift for folks that are in our 12 to 18 month Sponsor for Success program, just by pairing them with a senior leader who's motivated to help them succeed. All leaders of dominant culture identities should be sponsoring people of other identities. We're also partnering with our customers to share diversity and inclusion strategies, ideas, and resources. For example, we're in an ongoing collaboration with Morningstar, where we influenced each other's hiring strategies, and we collaborated on best practices for removing non-inclusive language from code repositories. We've also collaborated with SRO Motorsports to bring an increased awareness of diversity to that industry. And we're partnering with the NAIC. That's the largest network of diverse private equity and hedge funds, and we're facilitating a flow of information between the technology and the investment spaces with the NAIC as part of that partnership. We're never going to achieve this alone. We've got to work together on it. We also have programs for underrepresented leaders and innovators where AWS expertise adds fuel to their fire. I hope if you were in Swami's keynote this morning that you made note of our brand new impact accelerators for women and Black founders. This is a $30 million commitment we launched today. It's going to provide cloud expertise to help underrepresented business owners get their dreams off the ground with speed. We also have a program called Lives at AWS through our ProServe team. And what Lives AWS does is it partners with underrepresented small and mid-sized businesses to do well-architected reviews and security reviews and help them shore up their security and protect themselves from bots and malware. Increasingly, and this is what I'm getting really excited about, our customers are coming to us not only to talk about inclusion and diversity in hiring and in the workplace and in the culture, but they also want to build diversity, inclusion, and equity solutions for their customers on AWS. And I think this is where it gets really interesting, right? The power of cloud computing plus big data plus a willingness to want to change the world for better. Two stunning examples are on the slide behind me. One is ADP and their pay equity storyboard. It launched last summer, And since then, 1,000 of ADP's customers have been using this pay equity storyboard to look for demographic discrepancies in pay data. So that could be gender, it could be race and ethnic, it could actually be anything that you gather data on about your employees that you want to examine. This pay equity storyboard between August and December of last year made a difference in the lives of 210,000 employees at customers of ADP's who on average saw their pay go up by $3,500 a month. So all of that is powered on AWS, and we're working with ADP to harness all that big data that they're collecting on their customers and help their customers move their equity agendas forward. I hope that you've also heard of Squire. Squire is a unicorn startup. It was founded by 2 Black founders on AWS, and what they've done is connect the power of the cloud with the underserved population of barbershops across the US, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry and pretty slow to adopt new technology. So Squire developed a cloud-based business management software program that helps those barbers expand their business and add a tech layer to their customer experience in a way that's never been available before. Besides an increasing desire on behalf of our customers to do more work in the equity space, I've got a couple hot topics that you should watch for. These are things that are developing that we're watching. The first one may not be obviously a DEI initiative, but I'm here to tell you that health and wellness are DEI issues, especially in light of the global pandemic. The COVID pandemic disproportionately impacted women and communities of color, and companies have to get better at supporting parents and caretakers if they want to diversify their employee base. More than ever, employees need flexible and hybrid workplaces. We need comprehensive physical and mental health resources, and we need organizational support, true organizational acknowledgement and support for a spectrum of identities, not just the dominant race, culture, or gender. Accessible user experiences are also something I'm watching keenly. Expect to see more focus on inclusive design. Inclusive design designs for the margins, not for the middle. There is a very often overlooked segment of the population, and that is people with disabilities. At 1.85 billion, that is a population the same size as China and the EU combined. It's an emerging market, and we should be thinking about it. And a deeper practice of equity is coming to the AI/ML space as well. You'll start hearing about explainability and more inclusive data sets. You know, AI is becoming increasingly ubiquitous. It helps us make hiring decisions. It helps us make judicial sentencing decisions. It's increasingly having an impact on more and more human lives. And the problem is that the algorithms that often underlie that are unintelligible by human brains. Like, we can no longer see into what those algorithms are doing. So explainable AI builds a glass box model. It builds a human-friendly model so that we can look for and root out biases and really understand how decisions are being made, especially when they're decisions about humans. I also want to talk about underlying data sets. If your underlying data sets that you're training your models on do not match your customer population, including the margins, you're going to build a product or service that works really well for a lot of people and horribly for some. Right? That can have, I'm sure you can imagine, disastrous impacts. So employing diversity on your AI/ML teams, including at the leadership level, is the best thing you can do to make sure to get out ahead of that, root out unwanted bias, and catch problems before you launch them into your customers' lives. All right, we've covered a lot here today. Hopefully I've got you thinking about how you can contribute to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I want to leave you with 3 powerful questions that you should always be asking as you advocate for this stuff in your organization. Who's missing? Whose feedback is missing? Who hasn't yet been invited to participate? What is the data not telling you? Secondly, what are the barriers to full inclusion? You can ask this in any situation. This could apply to your workplace. It could apply to the product that you're developing. What would full inclusion look like if we designed this for the full variety of human individuals? And lastly, what would equity look like? What's the ramp in this situation? What would this product or service or workplace look like if we were designing for the full spectrum of customers or employee needs and circumstances? In addition to those 3 powerful questions, I have a few other ideas you can take home with you. Make sure you're measuring both diversity and inclusion. Do not underestimate the power of culture on both innovation and retention. Sponsor others. Even if your organization doesn't have and will never have a formal sponsorship program, this is something you can do today if you're in a position of power. Figure out how to use your privilege and your power to advocate on behalf for those with less. Seek to understand their career goals and advocate on their behalf. Create opportunities. Sometimes your most powerful act can be either to step aside and invite someone else to speak, or to pull up another chair to the table. And collaborate and share what's working. We're all working uphill here. We're all working against a long history of injustice and inequity. And like I said, this is legacy work. We're all in this together. This entire industry has a ton of work to do. In fact, this entire human race has a ton of work to do. And I'm really appreciative of your time and attention today on some ideas on how to get started. At AWS, we believe that technology should be built in a way that's inclusive, diverse, and equitable, and we have a responsibility to make sure that that happens. We have a long way to go, but we're committed to putting in the work to bring more diversity into tech, and you're invited to join us on that journey. I'm required to remind you that we've got all kinds of in-demand cloud skills available through training and certification, so check that out. And thanks so much for joining me here today. I appreciate you.